The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse, casting golden stripes across the polished hardwood. I straightened my silk blouse, feeling the smooth fabric against my skin, and sipped my coffee while scrolling through my emails. Life looked perfect from this corner of the city, but perfection was only ever a mask. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my brother, Michael, flashed across the screen. "Call me. Now." My stomach sank. Memories I thought I'd buried came rushing back. The fight, the words my husband had spat years ago, the cold dismissal that had cut deeper than any blade. "Your brother? She doesn't deserve a dime, she's out." I clenched my coffee cup, the porcelain trembling slightly in my hand. He didn't know that I had quietly clawed my way back, step by step, while he and my husband assumed I was lost. But now, the past was pressing against the present, demanding attention. I could hear the city's hum outside, the distant honk of cabs, the soft swish of my curtains in the breeze. The juxtaposition was almost cruel, my calm, controlled life now colliding with the chaos of what had been. I took a deep breath, a small smile tugging at my lips, and tapped the call button. This is where it all starts, I thought, feeling a spark of the fire I had almost forgotten. 3 years ago, I was nowhere near this life. I lived in a cramped apartment, barely making rent, and trying to keep my dignity intact while my husband belittled me in front of my own family. I remembered that day vividly. My brother, Michael, had stormed into our living room, anger radiating off him. My husband, glassy-eyed with contempt, looked at him and sneered. "Your sister? She doesn't deserve a dime. She's out. Pack her things if you have to, but don't expect me to help." I felt my hands shake as a lump rose in my throat. I wanted to scream, to cry, to beg him to see me, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I turned to my grandmother's gift, a small, silver locket she had pressed into my palm a year earlier. "This is your reminder," she'd whispered. "No one can define your worth but you. Hold on to that, Samantha." That night, I sat cross-legged on the floor, clenching the locket, and made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for validation, I wasn't going to beg for support, and I certainly wasn't going to let anyone else dictate my life. I would leave the toxicity behind and build something that was entirely mine, even if no one believed I could. The sting of betrayal was sharp, but it became the engine that propelled me forward. Every tear, every insult, every doubt, each was a brick in the foundation of the life I was about to construct. I started small. Freelance projects at first, design gigs, marketing consultations, anything that would pay rent and keep my mind occupied. Every evening, when the apartment fell silent, I pored over tutorials, taught myself business strategies, and mapped out a life no one had dared to imagine for me. Then I met Claire Donovan, a seasoned consultant with a reputation for turning fledgling businesses into profitable ventures. I found her through a networking event I almost skipped. She looked at my portfolio, raised one perfectly arched eyebrow, and said, "You have potential. Stop apologizing for wanting more." Those words were like a lifeline thrown across the churning waters of my self-doubt. Claire became my mentor, guiding me through negotiations, branding, and financial planning. She challenged me daily, and at first, I resented it. Long nights followed, coffee-stained notes, missed calls, self-doubt that gnawed at the edges of my resolve. I would catch myself staring at my reflection, imagining the life I could build if only the world would let me. But I didn't wait for permission. I created it. My first real win was a client who, at the time, seemed unattainable, a boutique fashion label struggling to break into international markets. I worked tirelessly, crafting marketing campaigns that highlighted their uniqueness, leveraging digital tools in ways they hadn't considered. When I saw their first surge in sales, I cried quietly in my apartment, clutching the silver locket my grandmother had given me. Each small victory felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Months turned into years. I hired a small team, built my brand, and eventually launched my own consultancy, Hayes & Company. My net worth, once a vague dream, started becoming tangible. And yet I kept it all hidden. Family thought I was making it slowly, while in reality, I was rewriting the rules entirely. Every holiday, I smiled politely when my brother asked about my career, never revealing the truth. Every interaction with my husband became a performance. The defeated, struggling Samantha he had expected remained in the past. The woman he thought he'd crushed was gone. And through it all, the locket never left my side. It was my talisman, a reminder that my worth was self-made, unshakable, and undeniable. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. And soon, the people who had underestimated me would see the full measure of what I had become. The thought sent a thrill through me. Patience had been my weapon, resilience my armor. And soon, the time would come to wield both in full view of those who had dismissed me. The day they arrived, I made sure everything was impeccable. My office gleamed under the soft afternoon light, a mix of modern minimalism and personal touches, a sleek mahogany desk, abstract art commissioned from a local artist, a crystal vase with fresh lilies. Every detail whispered control, taste, and quiet power. Michael and my husband didn't know what they were walking into. They expected the same fragile, defeated Samantha they had once dismissed. I almost let myself savor that moment, the shock that would ripple across their faces when reality hit. The door opened and they stepped in. My husband's eyes immediately darted to the expensive decor, the high-end laptop, the neatly organized files, and the champagne-colored leather chairs. Michael's jaw tightened, a faint tremor betraying the mix of guilt and disbelief simmering beneath his anger. I greeted them with a calm, measured smile. "Welcome," I said, my voice steady, carrying the warmth of someone in full command of her life. I motioned toward the chairs. "Please have a seat. We have a lot to discuss." They exchanged glances, silent questions passing between them. Then I began. Slowly, carefully. "You probably think I'm still struggling," I said, letting the words linger in the air. "That I'm the same person you left behind, the one you tried to write off." I walked to my desk, letting my gaze sweep across the room, letting them take in everything I had built. But I'm not. I leaned on the desk, unclasping the silver locket around my neck and holding it for them to see. "This," I said, my voice soft but firm, "was a reminder from someone who believed in me before anyone else did. It's kept me grounded, motivated, and, ultimately, unstoppable." I tapped a few keys on my laptop, and a presentation unfolded on the large screen behind me. Charts showing exponential growth, contracts with international clients, photographs of my team at product launches, and letters from satisfied clients praising my work. Michael's eyes widened. My husband's mouth opened, closed, opened again. They stared, disbelief etched across their faces. "I own Hayes and Company outright," I continued, walking slowly toward the window overlooking the city. "My net worth has grown far beyond what either of you imagined. I did this without anyone's help, without begging, without depending on your approval. And I did it quietly, while the world assumed I was still struggling." The silence that followed was deafening. I let it stretch. Let them absorb the truth. Let the shame settle where it belonged. "You wanted to see me fail," I said finally, turning to face them fully. "You doubted me, dismissed me, even laughed at the idea that I could ever be independent. But here I am. And the person you underestimated most was me." Michael swallowed hard, guilt flickering across his face. My husband's fingers twitched, the words he had spat years ago echoing now in the hollow space between us. I let them sit with it. No shouting. No pleading. Just truth, raw and undeniable. And then, in that charged silence, I saw the shift, the realization that I had rewritten every expectation, claimed every piece of dignity they had tried to strip away. Power was no longer a word they could wield over me. It belonged to me entirely. I let the room breathe in the weight of my success, watching as disbelief softened into something else, an awareness that I had changed the rules entirely. And now it was my turn to define what came next. "I'm not here to punish anyone," I began, my voice calm but unwavering. "I've carried enough pain for all of us. But I am here to set conditions, clear boundaries for anyone who wants to be part of my life moving forward. Michael's shoulders stiffened. My husband's lips pressed into a thin line, bracing himself. I could feel the tension thickening, but I didn't waver. First, I said, turning to my brother, you need to stop measuring people by the approval of others. Support doesn't mean control. You've spent years trying to manage my life, but it's time to start trusting yourself and me. I will always be your sister, but I am not your project. He nodded slowly, a mixture of shame and relief washing over his face. And you, I said, my gaze shifting to my husband, need to accept that respect is earned, not demanded. You cannot dictate someone's worth, and you certainly cannot rewrite history to suit your comfort. If you want to be part of my life, you must acknowledge the choices I've made and let me live free from your judgment. I paused, letting each word sink in. If either of you wants to be part of my world, you will honor these boundaries. You will confront your toxic patterns. You will pursue your own growth, not mine. Because my life, my success, is mine alone. Then, softer, but just as firm, I added, this isn't revenge. It's self-respect. I care about both of you, but I will not compromise the woman I've become to appease old dynamics. Compassion does not mean submission. The room felt heavy, yet charged. I could see their minds turning, processing not only my words, but the reality I had made undeniable. It wasn't about money or even about success. It was about claiming the dignity they had tried to strip from me. Finally, I leaned back slightly, letting the quiet assert itself. I will help where it's constructive. Advice, support, guidance. I will give these freely, but only if it contributes to growth, not control. This is my condition. We move forward with respect, honesty, and purpose. Nothing less. Michael exhaled slowly, nodding with more conviction this time. My husband's jaw relaxed slightly, and though pride and stubbornness lingered in his eyes, I saw the flicker of understanding. For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift. Not just the burden of proving myself, but the relief of finally setting the rules on my terms. Power was no longer an abstract concept. It was tangible, deliberate, and fully mine. I smiled, a small, victorious curve of lips. This was the moment I had built toward, piece by painstaking piece. They had underestimated me, dismissed me, and tried to write me off. And now I was not only seen, I was unstoppable. Weeks passed, and the air between us shifted. Michael began taking real steps toward change. He started pursuing his passion for photography, rather than criticizing mine. He called me for advice, not validation, and I offered it freely, smiling at the irony of how far we'd come. My husband remained cautious, but the tension softened. He started acknowledging my achievements in conversation, small nods of respect that felt like victories in their own quiet way. He wasn't fully transformed. No one can rewrite decades overnight, but he was learning that control and condescension no longer held power over me. I often found myself holding the silver locket, the gift from my grandmother that had guided me through so many nights of doubt. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of resilience, a tangible reminder that my worth had always been mine to define. I traced its curves and remembered the tears, the trembling hands, and the nights spent building a life from scratch. Every struggle, every moment of fear had led to this, me, fully realized, fully unstoppable. Looking out over the city from my office one evening, I let the sunset bathe the skyline in gold and rose. I thought of the girl I had been, the one trembling at my husband's harsh words, doubting her own abilities, and smiled softly. She had made it. She had taken the pain, the betrayal, and turned it into power, purpose, and grace. And in that moment, I understood something vital. Victory wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving to myself that I was enough, that I had always been enough, that I could rise, thrive, and carve my own destiny. I clipped the locket back around my neck and whispered to myself, almost like a mantra, I am the architect of my life. No one else writes my story. The city lights flickered on one by one, a soft glow illuminating my space. I leaned back in my chair, confident, poised and calm. I had faced the people who tried to define me, and I had rewritten the narrative entirely. This wasn't just closure, it was liberation. And now, nothing could hold me back. I allowed myself a small, knowing smile. The past had tested me, tried to break me, and even humiliated me, but it had also given me something priceless, the woman I had always been meant to become. Strong, independent, unstoppable.